foundations, atmosphere, and the forces shaping early 18th century Paris. Paris in the early 1700s awakens slowly beneath a pale northern sky, its outline defined by church spires, crowded rooftops, and the broad, glinting ribbon of the River Seine. This is the capital of the Kingdom of France, the largest city in Europe, and the symbolic heart of royal power, yet it is not the polished, symmetrical Paris of later centuries. It is a city of contrasts. Splendor and squalor pressed tightly together, elegance rising directly above filth, tradition colliding with the first stirrings of modern thought. The century opens under the long shadow of Louis XIV, whose reign has shaped France through war, taxation, and spectacle. Though the Sun King's court now resides permanently at Versailles, Paris remains the administrative, economic, and cultural engine of the kingdom. Government ministries, courts, guild halls, universities, and printing houses cluster within its medieval walls. Decisions made here ripple outward across provinces, colonies, and battlefields far beyond France's borders. Geographically, Paris is still confined and dense. The city spreads outward from the Isle de la Cité, its ancient core, where Notre Dame dominates the skyline and the law courts hum with constant activity. Narrow streets twist unpredictably through neighborhoods built over centuries, many scarcely wide enough for carts to pass. Tall timber-framed houses lean inward, blocking sunlight and trapping odors. Open sewers run down the middle of streets, carrying waste toward the river. Yet despite the grime, the city pulses with life from dawn to dusk. Each morning begins with sound before sight. Church bells ring from every quarter, marking the hours and calling the faithful to prayer. Vendors shout as they arrange bread, vegetables, and fish in open markets. Carriages rattle over cobblestones, carrying nobles, merchants, and officials to their daily affairs. The Seine becomes a moving corridor of commerce, crowded with barges transporting grain, firewood, wine, and stone. Paris survives on this river, and the fear of its disruption, through flood, freeze, or mismanagement, haunts the city constantly. Politically, Paris lives under absolute monarchy, but power is layered and complex. Royal authority flows downward through ministers, magistrates, and police officials, yet the city retains traditions of local governance and resistance. The Parlement of Paris, a powerful judicial body, frequently clashes with the crown over taxation and royal edicts. Beneath these institutions, ordinary Parisians navigate a world of regulations, licenses, tolls, and watchful eyes. Surveillance is growing, as the monarchy seeks to maintain order in a city prone to unrest. Daily life reflects both stability and strain. Bread is the cornerstone of survival, and its price dictates the mood of the population. When grain is plentiful, Paris hums with cautious optimism. When shortages strike, fear spreads quickly. Rumors travel faster than official announcements, carried through taverns, workshops, and markets. Hunger does not merely weaken bodies, it sharpens tempers and erodes loyalty. Yet this is also a city of ambition and imagination. Paris in the early 1700s is becoming Europe's intellectual crossroads. Coffee houses appear alongside taverns, hosting conversations that stretch late into the night. Writers, philosophers, and pamphleteers debate religion, science, and authority. Though censorship remains strict, ideas slip through cracks in the system, moving quietly from hand to hand. The foundations of change are being laid, often unnoticed by those in power. As the century progresses, Paris stands poised between old certainties and emerging doubts. Tradition still governs daily rhythms, but something restless stirs beneath the surface. The city does not yet know it is approaching a breaking point, but the first light of transformation has already begun to rise. Society, hierarchy, belief, and rising pressure within the city. To walk through Paris in the mid-1700s is to pass through layers of society compressed into a single space. The social hierarchy is rigid, yet physically intertwined. Nobles ride through the same streets where beggars sleep. Priests move between palaces and slums. Merchants and artisans form the city's backbone, their labor sustaining both the luxury of the elite and the survival of the poor. At the top stand the aristocracy and high clergy, many of whom own grand townhouses along the Seine or in districts like the Marais. Their lives revolve around privilege, inheritance, and proximity to royal favor. Though Versailles remains the center of court life, Paris offers influence through salons, patronage, and intellectual circles. Here, noblewomen host gatherings where philosophers, scientists, and writers exchange ideas under chandeliers and gilded ceilings. Conversation becomes a subtle form of power. Below them, the bourgeoisie grows in confidence and number. Merchants, lawyers, doctors, printers, and financiers benefit from trade, colonial expansion, and urban demand. They value education, property, and reputation, and increasingly resent the privileges granted by birth alone. Many embrace enlightenment ideas, seeing reason and merit as alternatives to inherited rank. Their homes are modest compared to aristocratic mansions, but far more comfortable than the dwellings of the poor. The majority of Parisians belong to the working classes. Artisans labor in workshops regulated by guilds that dictate training, production, and prices. Apprentices live under strict discipline, hopping one day to become masters themselves. Laborers haul goods, dig foundations, and clean streets for meager wages. Domestic servants, often young and newly arrived from the countryside, occupy an uncertain position, close to wealth yet vulnerable to exploitation. Religion remains central to daily life, shaping both belief and routine. The Catholic Church dominates the cityscape, its institutions woven into every stage of life from birth to burial. Yet faith is no longer unquestioned. Skepticism spreads quietly among educated circles, and even among the poor, resentment grows toward clerical privilege. Tithes and church taxes feel increasingly burdensome, especially when priests appear aligned with the wealthy and powerful. Conflict simmers beneath the surface. The monarchy's constant need for revenue, driven by wars and debt, results in heavy taxation, most of which falls on those least able to pay. Smuggling, black markets, and corruption flourish as people seek to survive within an unjust system. Police patrol the streets, but order is fragile. Riots erupt when bread prices rise too high or when rumors of hoarding circulate. Print culture accelerates tension. Pamphlets, newspapers, and satirical cartoons circulate widely, spreading criticism of officials, nobles, and even the king himself. Though dangerous to possess, these writings give voice to frustrations long suppressed. Paris becomes a city not only of labor and worship, but of argument, spoken, written, and whispered. War, too, leaves its mark. Conflicts like the War of the Austrian Succession and the 7 Years' War drain resources and bring wounded soldiers back into the city. Defeat damages national pride and exposes weaknesses in leadership. Victory offers only temporary relief, as costs continue to mount. By the latter half of the century, Paris feels crowded not just with people, but with pressure. Inequality is visible everywhere. The gap between promise and reality grows harder to ignore. The city still functions, still dazzles, still celebrates, but the balance is becoming unstable. Crisis, transformation, and historical consequence. By the 1780s, Paris stands at a critical height, larger, louder, and more restless than ever before. Its population has swelled beyond 500,000, straining infrastructure never designed for such numbers. Streets remain narrow, sanitation inadequate, and housing overcrowded. Yet alongside these problems, cultural and intellectual life reaches extraordinary intensity. The city hums with energy, creativity, and confrontation. Public spaces take on new meaning. The Palais Royal becomes a hub of debate, entertainment, and political discussion. Cafes overflow with patrons reading newspapers and arguing over reform. Theaters stage works that subtly question authority and social order. Ideas once confined to private salons now spill into the streets, accessible to artisans and laborers as well as lawyers and scholars. Economic hardship sharpens every grievance. Poor harvests push bread prices to dangerous heights, and desperation spreads quickly. The monarchy's attempts at reform falter against entrenched privilege and bureaucratic resistance. Trust in royal leadership erodes, replaced by suspicion and anger. Paris, long accustomed to hardship, begins to see its suffering not as fate, but as injustice. When crisis finally arrives, it does not erupt from nowhere. It is the result of decades of imbalance between wealth and poverty, authority and accountability, tradition and change. Paris becomes the stage upon which these forces collide. Crowds gather, symbols fall, and the city's streets witness moments that will echo across the world. The revolution transforms Paris physically and psychologically. Old institutions collapse, new ones rise, and violence reshapes neighborhoods and lives. The city that once served an absolute monarch becomes a symbol of popular sovereignty, radical possibility, and profound contradiction. Yet the legacy of 18th century Paris extends beyond revolution alone. The ideas forged in its cafes, printing houses, and salons reshape modern politics, philosophy, and society. Concepts of citizenship, rights, and reason spread far beyond France, influencing generations to come. To tour Paris in the 1700s is to witness a city in motion, anchored in tradition yet pulled toward transformation. Its crowded streets, echoing bells, and restless voices form more than a backdrop to history. They are its engine. In understanding this Paris, we glimpse not only the fall of an old world, but the uncertain birth of the modern one.